All right, good morning, everybody. We left off on Yud Gimel Amid Beis. As I mentioned earlier, that we're only going to do a blot today. I got to sort of check out early from the shear. So we left off maybe, 15 lines from the bottom, 20 lines from the bottom, 2 dots by Psachi Alakinim. So we had in the previous, or in our Mishnah, we described there were 15 different Memoinim, appointees in the Mikdash, administrators, and different jobs. We said, in the list, each one of them by name is a machlokes as to was it all during a certain period of time, or was it all these were like the top of their position. So you have Psachi Alakinim, Sabore, says the common listen, Ma Gadol hu Kaicho Shel Isa Ish Shu Pasech Dvarim V'Darshan. Right, he used to go ahead and he would see words and he would darshan from them. And he would understand words. Right, Yodem Shivim Lashon, and he would know 70 languages. So Tani, we learned Sanhedrin Sheish Shnaim Sheichel Daber V'Cholan Roin Lishmoa. If you have a Sanhedrin where 2 people were able to go ahead and speak 70 languages and everybody else was able to understand the languages, just 2 of them were able to speak to it. Harei Zerui Sanhedrin. That is a fit Sanhedrin. That fulfills the requirement of a Sanhedrin. Shleisha, a medium, and Arba, if they had 4 members of the Sanhedrin who were able to speak all 70 languages and everyone else understand, Harei Zo Chachma. That was Chachma. V'Yavna Hayu Ba'arba. And when Yavna, the Sanhedrin there, they had 4. And who were they? Ben Azai, Ben Zuma, Ben Chachinai, Rabbi Elazar, Ben Masya. And those are these 4. Those were able to go ahead and speak all 70 languages. And Amar Rav Chizda, Pam Achas Yashva Yavsha Eretz Yisrael. One time in Eretz Yisrael, it was dry. It was a drought, and they didn't know from where they're going to be in the Omer from. And there was a certain Elam. Elam is a deaf mute. Dahavi Yahiv Chad Yade al Gagois, Chad Yade al Tzrifim. He put one hand on a roof and one hand on a tzrifim. They didn't know what he was talking about. So as soon as coming to the Psachi, and they brought him from Psachis, Amalu. So he says, looking at what he was saying, so Is Agar de Miskara Gagos Tzrifin or Tzrifin Gagos. Is there a place called Gagos Tzrifin or Tzrifin Gagos? Azina and Latama, they went over there to Gagos Tzrifin, the Ashkan, and they found basically the Omer, it was over there. So he understood even this Elaine, even this deaf mute, what his hint was. That was his understanding, his genius. And Abu Rabbi Yisa be Rabbi Bun Pamachas nishdaf kol ha'olam kula v'havi yadin heichal havi omer. One time there was a wind blast, and they didn't know once again where to bring the omer from because all the fields were ruined in Eretz Yisrael. But havi taman chad elam. Once again, there's another elam. Davi Yoiv Yadal. Ena, he put one hand on his eye. The other al suchra, and the other put on a suchra as a door socket. And asin legavi psachia. So they brought the Pesach to see what he was trying to say. So Amarlo, they said to them, Is also the Miskara in Ein Seicher or Seicher Ayin? Is there a place called Ein Seicher or Seicher Ayin? And they went to Ein Seicher and they found indeed there was barley fit to be the Omer there, and they used that year for the Omer. Shalosh Nashim, in another case, Shalosh Nashim Haviu Kineim. One time 3 women brought their Kineim, their birds, their bird pairs, and Achas Ameres Le Nasi. One of them said it was for Lei Nasi. All right, they didn't know what that meant. Lei Nasi, we'll soon see. Achas Ameres Le Yamasi, the Achas Ameres Le Zivasi. One of them said it was for my Inasi. The other one says Yamasi. And the other one says Zivasi. So what happened? Zosha Ameres Le Nasi Savri Mima Shafas Kamayayin. The one that said that it was like her Ayin Yasi, like an ayin. Which would be like a spring. They thought that she was bleeding like a spring, and therefore her kinim were brought because she was a zava. However, so he said to them, perhaps she had some sort of danger with her eye, and therefore this was like an adava. It wasn't for a ziva, it was for an adava, and that's what it was. And when she thought Yamasi, they thought it was like a sea. Maybe she was bleeding like a sea. Once again, she was a zava. However, he said, no, I'm alone. B'yama sakanas. Maybe perhaps she was at sea and she was endangered, and that's why she wanted to bring this carbon. And indeed, that was what happened. When she said Zivasi, they said, okay, clearly she means it for her ziva. Some alone, he said to them, no, Bali told Esabana. No, perhaps a wolf was coming, a wolf was coming and endangered her child, and therefore she said, if they were saved, she would go ahead and bring this bird pair. And indeed, that is what happened. Fine. And Ben Achia. So Ben Achia used to go ahead and treat the people for stomach ailments. So al yedei shayu kohanim ahalchin yichefim ala ritzba vayichen basar v'shayis mayim. So because the kohanim, they would basically walk barefoot in the Beis Hamikdash, and they would eat meat and drink a lot of water. So they would get a lot of they would have a lot of stomach diseases. He know he knows which wine was good for the stomach, which wine was bad, and therefore that was his expertise, and therefore he helped the kohanim. And Nechunya used to go ahead and dig ditches. He would go ahead and dig ditches, ma'aros, and caves. And he would know high day in cave Mekaramayev, high day cave Isba Sharavari. You know which waters, I guess, were the cool waters, and which waters were the heated up waters. Vadhechan Sharusa Matya, and how far the heated waters would go in order for them to either get hot water or cold water, I guess, whatever they were looking for. And Omar Rabbi Acha Meis B'noi B'tzava, and the son died of thirst. Right. So Omar Rabbi Chanina, based on this, that the one who basically provided the water, his son died of thirst. Samandam Rachman of Atron. Yivashram B'nei the one who says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right, does not show rachamim, right, made his stomach, right, he should, he should have these stomach issues, right? In other words, don't say HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where is your midas hadin, where is your midas harachamim, for the fact that, he used to go ahead and provide water for everybody else, and his own son died of thirst. Right, he extends his anger in terms of how long it takes for him to go ahead and pay back, but ultimately he has to go ahead and pay people for what they deserve or punish for whatever reason. And Amar Rabbi Acha Ksiv, the pasuk says, "Svivav nishara ma'od." It says those are around him, right? Are nishara ma'od. So it was the word of nisara. So it says medaktek iman kechut hasara. Right, he says basically like the thin of a hair. That's how Kadosh Baruch Hu is exact in terms of paying people back. So therefore, they was exactly deserved, and that's why the payment was for. And Amar Rabbi Yosi brings his own pasuk. He says, "Lo mitam hazeh," not for this pasuk. There's another pasuk. Allah min ma dechsiv. It says the pasuk says v'noira al kol svivav. Right, and he is awesome upon all those who are around him. So knows those who are close can see the exact retribution more than those who are far. So you see that those who are closer get midas adin even more than those who are far. They get paid back in this world as opposed to the world to come. And Rabbi Chagam Shem Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman, Ma'is v'chasidach, one time was a Ma'is with the Chasid Shahaya Chayfer Bar Shechin Maras La'ivrim V'Shavim, that he used to go ahead and dig pits for the people who used to come and travelers in order to provide them water. His daughter was going to marry, and then the river overflowed and basically swept her away. Everyone tried to go by him and to console him, right, for his losing his daughter in the overswept river. Like and he did not accept. It was not any sort of nachman, any sort of consolation from these people. So Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, the Gabi Pinchas ben Yair, went to him to Abai Melech Mathe, like Kibel Aloi Mis Nachma, right? He went to go ahead and console him, and he was unable to be consoled. So Amar Lun, so he said to the people, Dinhu Chasidchon, right? Is this the one you guys call? He's your chassid of your town. So Rabbi, I used to use such things. He used to go ahead and dig water, provide water, and his own daughter, right, on their way to her wedding, should go ahead and be swept away. So this is what he used to do, and this is what happened to him. So Omar, is it possible that he would go ahead and serve his creator with water, and he would be punished this way with water? Miyad nafla havara be'ir basa bita shaisai. Immediately, the word fell throughout the city that the woman, that his daughter did return. In other words, he had a moon on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and she did not die. She was swept away, but she was saved. So how was she saved? So some say she was held onto a branch and she was saved that way. Some say some say a malach came down, right, in the form of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, and he saved her. Fine, 2 dots. And Gvini used to go ahead and cry out. So Shahaya Machis Beis Hamikdash, she used to go ahead and ask Beis Hamikdash, Maya Omer, what did he say? Imdu HaKohanim la'avoda, Levim l'duchna v'Yisrael l'ma'amadim. Right, the Kohanim should get up to do the avoda. Levim should get up to go ahead and they're duchning for singing, and the Yisrael should go ahead and be ma'amid. They used to go ahead and stand while the Kohanim were performing the avoda. And Agrippas HaMelech shema koila ad shmona parsos v'nasan l'matana harbe. And Agrippas used to hear him from so far away, from even 8 parsos away, and he would give them many gifts. And Ben Gever, so our Mishnah says Ben Gever al Nilas Shar. Ben Gever, he was in charge of locking the gates. So Tirgum Rav Kume Debeis Rebbe Shila. So Rav explained before the house or the yeshiva of Rebbe Shila. He says, Kara Gever Achris Kroza. He says he called out, and his announcement was was spread throughout the land in terms of when to lock and when to not. Samarlei Emor Kra Tarnagula. So we have another Mishnah. They used to say that the roosters would go ahead and make the noise in the morning to go ahead and hint for the Kohanim to go ahead and start the avoda. So Malone, he said, I Vatanina Ben Gever. It doesn't say right Gever, right? It doesn't say referring to that. So Izachalamema Bar Tanagola, right? You're gonna say he's the son of a chicken. He's not. So it wasn't a chicken or roosters. They used to go ahead and make noise in the morning. Rather, it was somebody named Ben Gever. He was the one who used to go ahead and make the announcements in order for them to go ahead and start the avoda. And Ben Bavi al Abkiya, Ben Bavi was in charge of the wicks. Mizaveg Silos, he used to go ahead and adjust the wigs. And Rabbi Yasi Oyel Kufre. So one time, Rabbi Yasi went to Kufra, and Bo Mimanya Aleyan Parnasim. He wanted to go ahead and have Parnasim on the Tzibur, people in charge of the Tzibur, to set up a board, or the president, no one wanted to go ahead and accept the position. It's too much work. Oyel Vamer Kumayin, Ben Bavi al Abkiya. Right, so Ben Babi, who's just in charge of the wicks, he was only in charge of the wicks, and he was mentioned with the greatest one of the generations. So that you have the opportunity to have a job more important than just wicks and in charge of the people of the city, right? And certainly you'll be remembered with the Gedolei Hador. And Arza al Tziltel, he was in charge of the cymbals, making music. He had we're going over there. Hanif Haskan B'Sidaran, the Skan Kohen Gadol, right? He used to go ahead and wave a sudar, like wave a kerchief. Heikish Ben Arza B'Tziltel, and Ben Arza used to go ahead and began playing the cymbal and playing musical instruments. And Hurgas Ben Levi al Ashir, Hurgas Ben Levi, he was in charge of the Shira, Ruvim, Samra Biyacha, and the Ima Yisera Haviyada. Right, he had a beautiful voice. V'amro lav al Hurgas Ben Levi, Shamanim es Kaila B'Zemer. Right, he would sing. Ukshayanites Gula B'Sayich Apiv, and he put his fingers in his mouth, some sort of whistling. Hayamaitzi Kamamine Zemer. Different notes would come out. By Yukol Achiv Kohanim, Dizkarim B'Vasrosh, and everyone would basically would jump from the power of the sounds that he would make. And Beis Garmel Al Maisa Lechem Panim. And Beis Garmel was in charge of the Lechem Panim. He was in charge of basically baking the breads and having them in the molds and removing them. So Beis Garmel Havia Bekim B'Maisa Lechem Panim. Vidasa Beis Garmel was in charge of making the Lechem Panim, putting it in, having it bake, and then removing it. He didn't want to teach his trick how to go ahead and take out the fresh baked bread for them, because they used to be like in certain forms, and to remove from the form without them breaking apart. But he didn't want to go ahead and teach others. Alexandria says, you know what? You don't want to do it, so we're going to go ahead and if we want to teach others, we're going to go ahead and get people from Alexandria, we'll go down to Egypt and get people from there. Because they also knew how to do special ways of bread. However, they weren't Bekin experts in removing the breads. Why? They used to go ahead and bake it on the inside, heat it on the inside, and then they remove it, and only remove them from their forms on the outside. And therefore, the bread would not go bad. However, but those from Alexandria, they would go ahead and heat it up from the inside, and then they would go ahead and also remove the bread from their forms, right, on the inside, and therefore it would break apart. So therefore, we see that this family of Beis Gamru, they were the experts. So Kevan Sheyadachamim B'Davar Zahaya Amru Kol Masha Kadosh Baruch Hu Lichvod Baruch Kol Masha Baruch Kadosh Baruch Hu Lichvod Baruch. Everything Kadosh Baruch Hu created was for his own, right, for his own cover, right, and therefore, right, the only people who know how to do it were from Beis Gamru, from this Jewish people. From his Jewish family. Shenamar Kopal Hashem Lamanehu, right? Everything for Hashem, he made for his own sake. And Shalcha Charim Lo Yerasu Lavu. So they sent the base garment. Okay, we need you back. And they didn't want to come until they basically said, okay, we'll double your payment. So originally they took 12 mana, and then afterwards, they doubled it to 24. There was 24, but they would take 48. And how come you don't want to teach others your special trick? The Saras, we have a saying that we have a Masara from our fathers. Shahabayis Hazah Asi Lecharev. The Beis Hamikdash in the future will be destroyed. In other words, we're doing a lishma. It's not for the money, because we know that eventually the Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed, and there's a special secret. We don't want this to be used for purpose of avodah zarah. We want it only to be used for Hashem, and therefore we're not going to let this secret out so others can have it in their hands. Beis Haftinas, Maisek Taurus. Similarly, the Beis Haftinas, they used to go ahead and make the Maisek Taurus. They knew all the ingredients. They mixed it together to make the proper the Ketores, to make the incense that was burned every day. So Beis Haftinas, and they were experts in making the incense and having the fire go, the special smoke. They don't want to teach others. Once again, they said, okay, you don't want to teach others. We're going to go ahead and find the experts from Alexandria, Mitzrayim. And those people also know how to do Peter Baktaris. However, but they were not experts in terms of dealing with the smoke. Why? Right? It would go up very thin, like a stick, right, like a makkah, like a staff, and then it would spread out and come back down. But the others, it would spread out right away. It wouldn't go up in a thin stick, in a thin staff, and therefore it wasn't as good. And once the Chachamim saw this, he said, everything that Kadosh Baruch Hu creates is for his own kavod. Shnamar says, Kol hanikra b'shmi, anything that was called out in my name was done for my own kavod. And he brought a different pasuk. And Shalchu Achareim Lo Yerasu Lavu. Once again, they sent to the family of Timus. They didn't want to come. Ad Shekaf Lahem Schar, and says, you know what? We'll double your wages. So once again, the Shnei Masar Mana Yinoit Levanas Esri V'Arba. In the beginning, they said, okay, we'll give you 12 mana. They doubled it to 24. Rabbi Huda Omer Esri V'Arba Yinoit Levanas Arba Mishmana. Then Rabbi Huda says, no, it was originally 24. Then doubled it to 48. So Amar Lahed Mipnei Matem Reitzim Lelamed. How come you don't want to go ahead and teach others? So Amar Lahed, once again, Mesaras Hi Bi'Adedim Yavaseinu. Right, there is a Mesara. Our forefathers Shahabayis is a Asi Lecharev, that the Beis Hamikdash in the future will be destroyed. Shelo Yimadu Acharim V'Yosin Kain Lifnei Avodah Zarah Shalad. And therefore, if the secret gets out, perhaps we're in the wrong hands, and people will use this for the purpose of Avodah Zarah. We want to avoid this going to Avodah Zarah, and therefore we say that we're not going to teach anyone. And for this, they were praised for shevach, for good. They know one of their family ever went out with perfume, because people say, oh, they're using the ketairas. Not only that, if they would go ahead and marry a woman from another family, they say, we're going to get married, but you're not allowed to go ahead and wear perfume. So people won't say that you're perfuming yourself from the perfume of the incense of the Pita Maktaris, like Haiman Shenamar, to fill the pasuk which we've seen before in this Masechta. You will be clean from Hashem Yisrael. In other words, no one will suspect you. There'll be no suspect, not from Hashem and not even from Bnei Yisrael. People say, oh, they're using perfume for the wrong reason. And Amar Rabbi Yaisi, Pamachas Yaisi Yami B'Yishalayim. One time I was in Yerushalayim, Michel Beis Haftinas, and I found a young child from Beis Haftinas. So Amarti Lo, he said to him, B'ni, Be'ezim Mishpachah. Which family are you from? So Amar Li told me Mishpachas Pliny. He says, I'm from Beis Haftinas. So Amarti Lo, B'ni. Right? Says your forefathers, because they want to go ahead and be mechaved their own kavod and minimize kavod shemayim by not spreading the secret and tell others how to do the Torahs. Therefore, their kavod was minimized, but kavod shemayim nisraba. The kavod shemayim was nisraba, but some say this is actually an opposite. It doesn't mean the kavod shamayim was increased. Rather, kavod shamayim was decreased because the mikdash was destroyed. And another time, Amar Rabbi Kiva, Sachli Shimon ben Loga. One time, Shimon ben Loga told me, Malakit hayisi asavim ani b'tinok echad mishel beis avtinos. One time, I was going ahead and I was in the fields. I was collecting grass with a child also from the family of Beis Avtinos. V'ra'isi oiso shebacha. And I saw that he was crying. V'ra'isi oiso shebacha. And I saw that he was laughing. Amarti lo b'ni lama bachisa. Why'd you cry? Right? Because of the kavod, the honor of my father's house has minimized. Lama sachachta. So why'd you laugh? For the kavod that will be given in the future. And what did you see that made you bring you to these, to laugh and to cry, or to cry then to laugh? So malo ashel and negdi, right? I see the malo ashel. Malo ashel was one of the ingredients of the Tyrus, which is like a secret. So Nimusi lo, I said to him, Bini, Harelo, show it to me. Samarlo, Rebbe, I can't show anybody, right? It's a family secret, and therefore it's like the ingredients of Coca-Cola, right? I can't go ahead and tell you what it is to remain it a family secret. And Amar Rabbi Yechon Menuri, so I said Rabbi Yechon, one time I met an old man of Beis Avtimus, and he had a Megillah, right? He had a Megillah, a parchment, a scroll of simanim, of different spices. So Amar Li, so he said to me, Rebbe, the Sha'avar Hayu Beis Abba Tznuin. In the past, my Beis Abba, my father's house, was Tznuin, right? They were Tznuah, they were private. V'hayu, and they v'hayu masaran es Megillah hazayis elu elu, and they would give it to one another. They wouldn't spread it. However, Achshav Sheinan Beis Abba Nimani, but now that my father's house is no longer trustworthy, hey leches Megillah v'hizabira, right? Go ahead, you take the Megillah and be careful with it. Shabazi ate v'hertzesi at the early fnei Rabbi Kiva, when I told for Rabbi Kiva. He started crying. Therefore, we no longer, have to mention them poorly because they've given over the secret in order for the purposes of the Pita Maktaris for the Beis Hamikdash. And finally, Elazar ala Parochas. He was in charge of the parochas, the weaving of the parochas. I guess if it was damaged, to fix it. And Pinchas Amalbish, and Pinchas used to go ahead and dress the Kohanim. He used to go ahead and dress the Kohen Gadol. One time there was a Kohen that he gave over. He dressed a certain officer. And he gave him, 12 gold coins. It was very valuable. Some say he gave him 12 zuvim, 12 gold coins. Fine. Naya Mishnah. Let's get down to the next Mishnah. Mishnah says, Ein Paischim Shiba Amar Kolen B'Shleisha Gizbarim. Right? So we have no less, as we'll soon see, than 7 Amar Kolen. Right? 7 Amar Kolen are basically supervisors of those who are appointed, Ushleisha Gizbarim, and 3 treasurers who deal with the finances. And there is no decisions that can't be done with less than 2 officers. So basically, you have the 7 supervisors, the Gizbarim, and then the 2 officers. Chutz mi ben Achia, shal cholim, except for ben Achia, who was in charge by himself of the cholim of the stomach ailments. The Lazar Shal Paroches and also Lazar Paroches Shaisan Kiblum Rob Hatzibur Leim, right? Because most of the Tzibur was makabel them, and therefore they were able to go ahead and perform on their own, even though we don't deal with any one of these categories if there's less than 2. So the Gemara says, Ein Paiskim Shleishik Gizar Meshiva Amar. Don't have 3 7 supervisors, and Tani Mishnei Kaslikim, right? And 2 people that oversee it, to be on top. And where do you know this from? Because the pasuk says V'yichel v'azayu v'nachas. So Gizbarim. So it says Yichel, Azazia, and Nachas, right? This is Divrei Yamim. So they were the 3 Gizbarim. They were 3 treasurers. And then it says Vasael, V'yerimos, V'yozavad, V'aliel, V'Ismachayahu, Umachas, Ubenayah, which is 7. Colon, those were the supervisors, and Pekidim, Miyad, Kavania, V'Shimi Achav. And who were the officers on top of them? That was Kavaniyahu and his brother Shimi. And they were the Kaslikin, and they were the two people on top of them. They were two officers on top of them. They were appointed by Chizkiyahu, right, Hamelach v'Kohen Gadol, right, who was the king, and also the Kohen Gadol. And how would it work when they would go ahead and sign something where they would spend money on? So the Gizbar would first sign it, he would seal it, he would put his chasima on it, and then he would give it to his armkol, to his supervisor, and then the armkol chaysev and the kaslikon, and then the supervisor would go ahead and give it to his supervisor or his boss, right? And kaslito chaysev and the kohen gadol, then he would sign it and give it to the kohen gadol, right, which is the 4th step, and kohen chaysev and the melech, and he would go ahead and give it to the king, and that was the 5th step. And they would undo it. The king would look and say, "Okay, yes, this is my seal," and then open his seal. And Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Gadol would see his seal, approve it, and say, "Yes, this is mine." And then the head supervisor, one of the 2 head supervisors, who would oversee, he would see his chasima and open it. Then the supervisor would go ahead and see it. And then finally, it would come to the treasurer, who was the bottom one, and he would say, "Yes, this is my signature." They would open it, and this was the seal. We don't have anybody who does any financial decisions by less than 2 people. Rabbi Mana says Hashem, because the pasuk says "Vehem yichos hazav es tchelas ves haragamana." They took, says Vehem. So Vehem is plural. You see that when they're spending the public's money, it was at least 2. And Amar Rabbi Chanina, from the psolas, from that which the luchos were carved. So there were little, stones, or fragments that came off, crumbs, right? And he became rich in that. Psalucha shnei luchos avanim. It says, carve yourself 2 luchos avanim. Psalucha, the psal, the carvings are for you. The carvings belong to you. And Amar Rabbi Chanina, mechativ shel avonos tovios maglos berla kodesh baruch hu mitoch oilo umeno asher Moshe. So he said that from the precious rocks, right, and pearls that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made, right, that was Moshe Rabbeinu became wealthy from, i.e. the carvings. And see the pasuk says, Moshe ad bohal, and they looked after Moshe, right? Acharei Moshe, it says, ad bohal, when he goes to the tent. So Shrei Amarayim, so Machlokes between 2 Amarayim, Chadam l'Ganai, V'Chadam l'Shevach. One says it was like an insult, and the other one says it was a praise. The one who says there's a Ganai when they look from behind him, he says the Chamin Shakin, the Chamin Karai, the Chamin Kufat, right? Look, his legs are fat, right? His legs are fat, right? His flesh, it's all thick. So Achlo mina the Yehuda v'Shasi min Yehuda, right? He takes all the money from the Jews and he becomes rich like that way. I mean, Kol Midlei mean the Yehuda, and everything that comes from him really comes from the Jewish people. Uman Dion l'Shevach, one says they look from it from the Michame Yasi says that it said Halavai, we see from behind. Halavai, we should just see that just the fact that we saw him from behind, that was a big enough zechus. Even though we couldn't see from the front, you can see him from behind. That is a big enough zechus for us to see Moshe Rabbeinu. All right, we'll stop here because I got to start heading out there. So, Mirz Hashem, tomorrow we'll continue. We'll try and do a little catching up. And Mirz Hashem, we'll get there. All right, the goal is to finish on time. Mirz Hashem, I think we have another week or so. We can change. So we'll get there, Mirz Hashem. So everyone have a wonderful day and be well.
Shkayach.
Safe